Hello, my name is Mark Hodge. I'm a senior associate at Shift. Shift is the leading center of expertise on the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Delighted today to be sharing this video as part of the Investor Alliance for Human Rights Videolog series in advance of their upcoming webinars on the theme of corporate responsibility to respect human rights. The tool I'll be sharing today is a set of indicators and supporting resources to enable investors to better evaluate and engage with investee companies with regards to whether those companies are truly implementing respect for human rights throughout their operations, which is at the core of a company's social performance. The resource is a menu of 22 indicators of whether actions of boards and senior leaders are fostering a culture of respect for people. And there are three drivers, underlying reasons for this tool, or indeed investor needs that it's seeking to respond to. The first is that we hear again and again from investors that evidence of corporate policies and processes on paper offers limited insight to investors about a company's actual performance. This is increasingly challenging where we have more and more companies disclosing policies and processes with regards to human rights, which is a positive development. But the reality is what that leads to is it becomes harder for investors to discern which of those companies is actually operating with respect for human rights. By contrast, we hear again and again that corporate culture, if one can understand it, is a more powerful determinant of whether business gets done with respect for human rights. One way to think about this is that policies and processes signal what should happen inside an organization, whereas corporate culture is a good indicator of what actually happens. What do people actually think about their responsibilities? How do people actually behave on a day-to-day basis? That said, of course, it's very hard for an investor to get under the hood of an enterprise to understand its detailed cultural dynamics. So what this tool seeks to do is focus the attention on whether business leaders are fostering that culture. Are they doing things? Are they acting? Are they engaging with others in such a way that it's going to foster a culture of respect for people? This diagram is a representation of that logic, and it's really important, and this is why the upcoming webinar series is so critical. It's really important for investors to understand what good operational performance or operational excellence means with regards to respect for people. In the context of respect for human rights, it is that companies have robust policy commitments that they embed throughout key functions in the organization, supported by training and such like. The organization embeds processes and systems to allow it to conduct human rights due diligence, to anticipate and address risks in ways that are informed by relevant experts and stakeholders. And lastly, that companies actually address situations where they have failed to respect human rights. In other words, where harms occur, and they should do that through engaging in remedy or indeed by putting in place their own grievance mechanisms. That said, what this resource does, the leadership and governance indicators, is to be additive to an investor's engagement with governance and leadership of the enterprise, which is very much the sort of common angle, the common work that investors do, and where they see the best entry point to engage with enterprises. So let me just show you what this resource looks like online. Here is, I've just gone to the main menu of indicators that you can see here housed on Shift's website. These are all publicly available and free, the whole resource is. And you can see here down the left-hand side that there's a set of governance indicators that focus on the role of the most senior governing body or its relevant subcommittees. And there are 10 indicators that investors can select from as per their needs. If you hover over the little information box, it expands the detail of the indicator. So this first one is whether the board reviews and challenges the company's business model and strategy to ensure that inherent human risks are identified and addressed. That's very much sort of board scrutiny oversight role. We also have 12, as you can see on the right-hand side, 12 leadership indicators, and they focus on whether senior leaders at corporate, regional, country, business unit levels are in fact acting, behaving in such a way that will embed a culture of respect for people. And so, for example, here you see indicators concerning what leaders say in terms of their commitments, how they engage with challenges, to what degree they model respect for people, all the way down to things like whether leaders collaborate with others to address systemic issues that might be at the root of human rights risk, or indeed, this last indicator here, you can see that they support a culture of organizational learning by enabling learning from progress and indeed setbacks with regards to a company's efforts to respect human rights. This is an interactive menu. You can select specific indicators you want and then download the underlying resource that explains more about the indicator, how one could go about evaluating a company with regard to that specific indicator. Each of the indicator resources includes key diagnostic questions to ask leaders as part of an engagement strategy to get a sense of whether that organization is performing well with regards to some of these leadership and governance behaviors. So I'd like to then just end with a quick overview of some of the use cases we're already beginning to hear about from investors. The first one here concerns the use of the indicators for C-suite engagement. Clearly, if one could ask about what leaders do and what the board does, as against simply asking what's on paper in the enterprise, there's an opportunity for quite meaningful engagement with those leaders who should be implementing these behaviors. Investors are also using the tool to inform engagement about incidents to try and understand whether a negative occurrence and a severe situation that has occurred, is it a function of the organization's culture or is it an outlier event? If it's a function of the culture, it's likely to reoccur and occur again, and that can give insight to investors about where they put their capital. Improving targeted leverage. A number of investors have been using the tools and then adapting them to say, can we really get an insight as to how the organization thinks about specific issues, for example, modern slavery or land rights. It's clear that the governance indicators in particular can be used to formulate language in proxy resolutions, or indeed to enhance screening of portfolio companies, otherwise known as the S in ESG. So I'd just like to say thank you. Please visit the site with all of the indicators and supporting resources available to you. Again, I'd like to say thank you to the Investor Alliance for Human Rights for inviting us to contribute to this video series. Thank you.